several million francs of income for the tourism. So this is a very powerful argument for actually investing money afterwards. I know of very few such examples, but this certainly is a very interesting way forward, particularly here, obviously, for attracting tourists and trying to help them to become more physically active. Now, the next point on my list is actually motivating people, motivating individuals. And this is definitely not how it works. I mean, this is what people would like to do. They'd like to go on the internet and everything is taken care of. What it might work like is, for example, automated counseling systems. So what is happening if you're sitting opposite a physical activity counsellor, an expert, is simulated by a computer system. We have developed such a system in Switzerland again. It's called Active Online. It's available in German, French and Italian. You can go there, you can fill out some questionnaires and you get feedback. The feedback does not focus on training programs, but it focuses on support and it focuses on tips for integrating physical activity into daily life. So behavioral change is the real challenge there. We have just finished a study on it because similar programs and similar interventions have worked pretty well in smoking cessation particularly, but also in physical activity promotion. We put a lot of effort into developing this program. We've carried out a very thorough study, and I'm afraid we found no effect whatsoever. So it didn't really help people, at least the way we looked at it, in becoming more active. If you were using it in an isolated way, people were just recruited through the internet. I think it might be different if you're using it within a context. For example, if your local physician is telling you to go and use this internet site, or if, for example, in a worksite intervention, you're using this as one specific element. But we will have to see how this works in the future. It is quite expensive for developing it, but it's extremely cheap for running it. And you can have thousands, even 10,000 of people using it. Now, something that exists in a great variety are actually, then we have the specific use of feedback providing systems. You can do that based on questionnaires, obviously. So the questionnaire, the computer tells you whether your physical activity behavior is okay, and, for example, contacts you again after 3 months. Or you can do this using physiological measures. We've seen an example this morning about heart frequency measurements being used with children, and something that is used more and more these days are pedometers, step counters. They are very cheap and in some instances have shown to be effective. This is a recent publication from a big national program in Canada. The Canadians are very active in physical activity promotion, and the conclusions there from this specific study were, if you look at it here, that message recall and pedometer ownership were associated with increased odds of self-reported walking. So it seemed that the people who got a pedometer walked more, and the conclusion now of the authors here is that physical activity promotion can be enhanced by combining motivational health-related messages with easy-to-use tools like pedometers, for example. Then, if you go to the internet, you find many offers, such as the one that I'm going to show you now. These are training diaries. There are some for free, but there are some that are offered as a commercial service. This one is offered by Victor Rödlin, our top marathon runner. And if you're a keen runner yourself, you can go there, you can fill in your training diary, and you get feedback from an absolute expert, but you have to pay for it, obviously. Many such offers exist. Very few of them are evaluated, so we don't really know whether it works or not. To some extent, I guess, this is measured by the commercial success of such events or of such offers, but there are very few scientific studies about it. And then, finally, I think what the best element here is for the motivation are integrated links that try to link to what's really happening. This is a project here, a prevention program that covers different things like smoking, love and sexuality for youth, but also physical activity and sport. And you have a part, this is about general physical activity, some tips for becoming more active, and you have a very specific part about sports. What you can do there, if you're interested, you can read about this sport, you can look at a video. This is about orienteering. And then the next step is you can go again through a search engine to see what clubs are actually offering orienteering courses for youngsters financed through, subsidized through youth and sports. So when you do that again for the place where I live, you get a list of clubs in the area, and then you get specific information. This is, for example, our local club, and the most important thing there, you get a contact person with an email address and a telephone number. So if you're a youngster and you're really interested in this sport, you can go there. And I guess this is where the real change actually takes place, not on the internet or while you're sitting in front of your computer, but it can provide access to what's around. Now the last point I wanted to go into in this overview are exercise-generating video games. This is something most of you, I guess, like myself, are not really familiar with. We usually use the computer for our work, and then we're so fed up with it that in the evening we prefer to go out running. But there's a growing number of people that use computers and video games and TV sets for games. And these are the exercise-generating video games. There's quite a number of them. These are two of the most important producers. The left one uses a magnet mat. You're actually standing on this mat, and this provides feedback to the system, which then again is visualized on the screen. And the one on the right is using a camera that actually films you and provides feedback back to the system in this way. There is a plethora again of these different systems, and there's much money in it. It's a multi-million, if not even billion-dollar business. And there have been some concerns about the physiology. This was an early study, came out last year in the British Medical Journal, and when the authors there looked at the physiology of using these games, they said that these new generation active computer games, they use more energy than what would be done when playing a usual game, like just shooting somebody or something like that. I don't know what they do in these computer games. But it was not as much as you would be using if you were doing the real thing. This is pretty much what I found in the published literature, but I've had the opportunity to meet a young exercise scientist recently, Tehn, who actually specializes on this sort of thing. And he has a website, and you can go to his website and find a lot about the research being done in this field there. When I met him was at a presentation at the European Commission in Brussels, and he actually presented some new unpublished data there, and I've just taken the conclusions here. Conventional e-games, they use pretty much what you'd be using if you're resting, or maybe twice your resting energy expenditure, so 2 minutes. There seem to be new games, and it might be that I didn't get the spelling right of these games, because I don't know them myself. And they certainly go up to the moderate, if not even vigorous, or beyond that intensity range. So if you talk about something like 10 minutes, you might even start to be worried about health implications, because somebody would be doing that in a real-life health program. You would run them through a vestibular readiness questionnaire before you did that. And you certainly have the necessary intensity for health effects. Now, there is a market, I think, for this in specific applications. If you're thinking about therapy, people who need very specific ways of doing exercises, I think they can be helped with very specific instructions, in some way replacing actually the physiotherapist. The same goes for rehabilitation. The question obviously is the social question. I have this image of somebody jumping around in front of this TV set, which doesn't have very much to do with social behaviour. Now, Alistair came up with a good idea there. He said that they have developed approaches where, for example, they have school classes competing with each other in a game that adds up scores, and they had an example of a Scottish class competing with a class in South Africa. And they never would have been able to do that in real life, so they could do it through information technology. The main challenge, though, I think, is exercise adherence. Who takes part, and for how long do you do it? I asked Alistair again about it, and he said they don't have any data on that yet. So we will see what comes out of that. To some extent, I think the question adds up to that. Is that what you really like, doing physical activity in a real surrounding with all the impressions you have there, or are you quite happy with a virtual environment as well? So to some extent, the question might be the same as with exercise equipment. Exercise equipment certainly has a place, but it does not replace physical activity in everyday life, and it does not replace sport for all. So I've gone through these 4 points with you now, and I'd like to come to my conclusions. I think information technology can certainly help us to do faster, more efficiently, many of the things we've been doing so far. I think feedback systems are specifically promising, and the future will show us how much that can actually contribute at the population level as well. The video games, the exercise-generating video games, physiologically, I think they're okay. I don't know yet, and we will see what the future brings as far as participation in exercise adherence go. In all this, I think be realistic in what you can expect. Particularly if you look at interventions that really focus on the individual. It might be different if you have interventions that try to include the social environment by actually trying to target groups of people like sports clubs or schools or such things. Then they're probably more likely to be effective. And the overall conclusion, I think, is information technology can certainly support us, but it can never replace human interaction and personal experience. Thank you.